Good morning. I was scrolling through Facebook and somebody posted an old ad for the Renault car. Anybody who was alive in the 70s and 80s probably remembers the Renault car. They were they weren't a great car, that's all. I don't know if the French ever built a good car, but if they did, that one certainly wasn't it. And in the comments, some people were comparing it to the Yugo, which was a Yugoslavian car that was sold in the 1980s. And I believe you could buy one in the mid 80s, a Yugo, for around $2,000 new. And so they were a really cheap car. But back then, you'd really be better off to buy an older used North American car than to buy one of those. You could buy a really good used North American car for a fraction of $2,000, and it'd be a far better car than a brand new Yugo or than a brand new Renault car for that matter. But seeing those comments reminded me of something that I heard in around the mid 1980s. I had a 1967 Chev Bel Air, a sedan, a big 4-door sedan that I paid $200 for. And of course, it had the old AM radio with the clunky push buttons and all the chrome and everything. All the chrome on the dashboard and the clunky push buttons on the radio. Anyway, the funny thing was, there was one day I was driving somewhere and it was at night. And at night, of course, AM radio used to pick up a lot of American stations. And I was listening to some station out of Baltimore, Maryland. And anyway, the music part of the program was over, and there were some commercials and stuff. And then this announcer came on. I was never into sports very much, so I didn't really listen to sports on the radio. But I was driving, and I wasn't really paying a lot of attention. And the thing went, and anyway, it switched to sports basically. And I was kind of half paying attention, but not really, to what was on the radio. And all of a sudden, I hear this announcer say, "And now it's time for Baltimore Orioles baseball. Brought to you by Yugo. Our cars are crap, but they're cheap." I remember I laughed at that. I thought that was the greatest thing. As it was honesty in advertising. I still didn't want to own a Yugo, never would want to own one. But still, that was honesty in advertising anyway. I thought it was pretty good. Another thing that's kind of funny about it is these Yugo cars, they were a $2,000 car new, but they generally only lasted for a couple of years maybe, or 3 years or so. They didn't last very long. They were just a junk box of a car. And these were cars that were made in the former country called Yugoslavia, which doesn't even exist anymore. I don't know what it's called now, but it's no longer called Yugoslavia. After communism apparently collapsed in the late 80s and early 90s, Yugoslavia disappeared. But, it changed names anyway. I couldn't tell you what it's called now. But the thing is, these cars, they weren't very well made anyway. They didn't last very long. And it was quite a surprise to me when I still had my house a few years ago, and I moved into the house in 2016. So it was sometime after 2016. What do I see? But a Yugo. A Yugo came down the road there, and it turned around in the parking lot across the street from my house and then headed back towards town. And it had a dealer plate on it, so it was obviously for sale at a local dealership. But I mean, they haven't made those cars in like 35 years or something, 30 to 35 years. And they're only designed to last 2 or 3 years. If you got 5 years out of one, you think you had done really well. And here this car was that should probably have been in the junkyard in 1990 or before. And in the year 2016, 2017, 2018, somewhere in there, there was actually one of those cars going up and down the road. It was quite interesting anyway, and it kind of made me chuckle a bit.